Every day, millions of people unknowingly replace something their gut was designed to receive with drinks that do little more than satisfy thirst. Shelf-stable, heavily processed, and stripped of the living cultures that traditional fermentation naturally provides, they've quietly become the modern standard. The consequences rarely appear overnight. Instead, they build slowly: persistent bloating after meals, sluggish digestion, uncomfortable gas, and that heavy feeling that leaves many people wondering why their stomach never quite feels settled. But here's what most people don't realize. For thousands of years, long before refrigeration, laboratories, or commercial probiotics existed, families across the biblical world regularly drank their medicine, which supports digestion, and fight inflammation long before anyone understood the invisible world inside the human gut. Today, we will explore 16 of them. Some of the drinks on this list may be exactly what you'd expect. Others will completely challenge what you've been taught about fermentation, gut health, and even what belongs in a healthy diet. Pay close attention to number 14, because what starts as discarded fruit slowly comes alive with tiny bubbles, rich color, and a natural fizz that's unlike almost anything most people have ever seen being made at home. And don't leave before number 16. It isn't simply another fermented drink. It brings together one of nature's most remarkable combinations, which are naturally occurring organic acids and plant compounds whose combined role in supporting a healthy gut is continuing to attract scientific attention. Stay with me until the very end, because I'm giving you a 14-day challenge that will let you put one of these to the test. One important reminder before we continue. This content is shared for educational and informational purposes only, and is not intended as professional, medical, or nutritional advice. If you enjoy uncovering biblical healing wisdom through the lens of modern science, subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss what's coming next. Here are 16 fermented drinks your gut needs to fight bloating naturally. 1. Lassi, the yogurt gut healer. Long before people reached for digestive tablets after a heavy meal, families across the Indian subcontinent were already pouring a simple fermented drink that had earned its place at the table through centuries of experience. What made this humble beverage so enduring wasn't luxury or rarity. It was what happened after the meal was over. Lassi is a traditional fermented yogurt drink made by blending cultured yogurt with water and, depending on the region, herbs, spices, or fruit. Light, cooling, and naturally tangy, it is far more than diluted yogurt. Fermentation transforms it into a living food with a character all its own. For well over 1,000 years, Lassi has been woven into everyday life in India. Farmers drank it under the scorching afternoon sun. Travelers relied on it for refreshment, and generations of grandmothers served it after rich meals because they believed a settled stomach was the foundation of good health. That tradition survived because it worked well enough to be passed from one generation to the next. During fermentation, beneficial bacteria convert part of the milk's lactose into lactic acid, creating a drink that many people find easier to digest than fresh milk, while also producing compounds that contribute to its distinctive flavor and texture. Modern research suggests fermented dairy may help support a balanced gut microbiome and digestive comfort, though scientists continue to study how these effects vary from person to person. In a world filled with sugary drinks that simply mask thirst, Lassi represents something different, a beverage designed by tradition to nourish as well as refresh. Traditionally, it's made by whisking cultured yogurt with cool water and allowing the live cultures to do their work before serving it plain, or with ingredients like roasted cumin or fresh mint. Think of Lassi as an ancient conversation between milk and time, one that transforms an everyday ingredient into a living drink that has quietly earned its place on family tables for centuries. Now, from India's cooling classic, we travel west, to a drink that sustains shepherds across rugged mountains and windswept plains. 2. Ayran, the shepherd's digestive shield. Some of the world's most enduring foods weren't created in royal kitchens or great cities. They were born wherever people needed nourishment that could survive long journeys, scorching summers, and demanding days. Ayran is one of those quiet inventions, remarkably simple, yet resilient enough to endure for centuries. Made from fermented yogurt, cool water, and a pinch of salt, Ayran contains just 3 ingredients. Yet together they create a light, refreshing drink that has become a daily staple across Turkey, Central Asia, and parts of the Middle East. Its creamy texture, subtle tang, and natural mineral balance set it apart from the sweetened dairy drinks that dominate supermarket shelves today. For generations, shepherds, farmers, and travelers carried Ayran across rugged landscapes, where clean water, nourishing food, and relief from the heat were equally valuable. It wasn't simply enjoyed with meals, it became part of a way of life, passed from one generation to the next because it offered refreshment, nourishment, and digestive comfort in a single cup. Fermentation gives Ayran much of its character. Beneficial bacteria convert some of the milk's natural sugars into lactic acid, creating a pleasantly tangy flavor while producing compounds associated with fermented dairy. Modern research suggests fermented dairy foods may help support a diverse gut microbiome and healthy digestion, while the combination of water, natural minerals, and live cultures continues to attract scientific interest. Today, many people reach for brightly colored sports drinks or heavily sweetened beverages after a long day. Ayran reminds us that traditional cultures found another path, one built on living foods rather than highly processed formulas. Traditionally, Ayran is prepared by whisking cultured yogurt with cold water and a small amount of salt until smooth. The result is a naturally refreshing drink that's ready within minutes because the fermentation has already taken place in the yogurt itself. Think of Ayran as a trusted companion that crossed mountains with shepherds, not by chasing the latest health trend, but by quietly proving its worth one generation after another. Next, we'll discover how ancient Persia transformed this humble foundation into a fragrant fermented drink with a refreshing twist that still surprises first-time drinkers today. 3. Doogh, the Persian gut cooler. Some recipes survive because they taste good. Others survive because generation after generation refuse to let them disappear. Doogh belongs to the second story. At first glance, it looks like a simple yogurt drink, but one traditional ingredient quietly transforms it into something entirely different. Doogh is a fermented yogurt beverage made by blending cultured yogurt with water, then seasoning it with salt and fragrant herbs such as dried mint. In some regions, it is naturally carbonated, giving it a gentle effervescence that makes it especially refreshing on hot days. The result is a drink that's savory rather than sweet, a surprising contrast to most modern beverages. Its story stretches back through ancient Persia, where merchants, shepherds, and farming communities relied on it to cool the body and accompany hearty meals. Over centuries, it became woven into everyday life, served from bustling marketplaces to family tables, because it was simple to prepare, deeply satisfying, and valued for the comfort it brought after eating. Fermentation transforms ordinary yogurt into a living food rich in beneficial bacteria while producing lactic acid that gives Doogh its distinctive tang. Traditional additions like dried mint contribute their own aromatic compounds, creating a pairing that people have long associated with digestive comfort. Today, researchers continue to study fermented dairy and herbs like mint for their potential roles in supporting gut health and digestive function, although the exact effects vary among individuals. At a time when many fizzy drinks rely on sugar for flavor, Doogh offers a different kind of refreshment, one rooted in fermentation, herbs, and centuries of culinary wisdom. Traditionally, it is prepared by whisking fermented yogurt with cool water, salt, and dried mint, before serving it well chilled, allowing its clean, refreshing character to shine. Think of Doogh as a cool desert breeze captured in a cup, proof that sometimes the most refreshing ideas are the ones that have already stood the test of time. Next, we leave the ancient crossroads of Persia to discover a fermented tea that traveled across continents and became known by some as the drink of immortality. 4. Kombucha, the ancient gut awakener. Long before kombucha filled supermarket shelves with colorful labels and trendy flavors, it was quietly fermenting in clay jars, prized not for its popularity, but for the remarkable transformation that happened inside every batch. The real story begins long before the first sip. Kombucha is a fermented tea made by combining brewed tea, sugar, and a living culture known as a SCOBY, a symbiotic culture of bacteria and yeast. Over 1 to 3 weeks, that culture transforms sweet tea into a lightly sparkling drink, layered with organic acids, beneficial microorganisms, and a distinctive tang that no ordinary iced tea can match. Historical records trace kombucha's origins to ancient China, where it was valued centuries before refrigeration or commercial probiotics existed. As trade routes expanded, the drink traveled through Russia, Eastern Europe, and beyond, carried by merchants and families who preserved the living culture from one generation to the next. It survived because the culture itself could be shared endlessly, making every household capable of creating another batch. During fermentation, the microorganisms consume much of the sugar while producing organic acids, trace vitamins, and a complex community of living microbes. Modern microbiome research continues to explore how fermented foods like kombucha may support microbial diversity and digestive health, although many of its traditional uses still require further human research. Today's bottled soft drinks are manufactured for consistency and shelf life. Traditional kombucha was crafted for vitality, alive until the day it was poured. That difference is easy to overlook but impossible to recreate once the living culture is removed. Traditionally, kombucha is prepared by fermenting sweetened black or green tea with a SCOBY for 7 to 21 days before bottling, allowing time, not additives, to shape its character. Think of kombucha as an ancient tea that learned to breathe, transforming from something ordinary into a living ecosystem with every passing day. But if you think fermentation reached its peak with tea, the next drink proves that even honey can tell an extraordinary story when time and living cultures work together. 5. June tea, the honey fermentation secret. At first glance, June tea looks remarkably similar to kombucha, but hidden inside this elegant golden drink is one simple change that completely transforms its character. And for centuries, that difference has fascinated the few who have kept its tradition alive. June tea is a fermented beverage made with green tea, raw honey, and a specialized culture closely related to a kombucha SCOBY. Unlike kombucha, which traditionally relies on cane sugar and black tea, June draws its sweetness from honey, producing a lighter, smoother, and delicately floral drink that feels almost effortless to sip. Its exact origins remain something of a mystery. Many stories trace June tea to communities in the Himalayan region, while others connect it to ancient monastic traditions where fermentation was valued as both a practical skill and a patient craft. Although historians continue to debate its earliest beginnings, what is clear is that June survived because each batch became the starter for the next, preserving a living culture that families and small communities carefully maintained over time. As the culture feeds on the honey and tea, fermentation produces organic acids, beneficial microorganisms, and a complex range of flavor compounds while reducing much of the original sweetness. Researchers continue to investigate how fermented tea beverages and raw honey contribute to microbial diversity and digestive wellness, though many of June's traditional associations remain grounded in centuries of cultural experience rather than definitive clinical evidence. In today's world, sweetness usually comes wrapped in refined sugars and artificial flavors. June reminds us that sweetness can also become the beginning of a living fermentation rather than the end of it. Traditionally, June tea is prepared by fermenting green tea sweetened with raw honey for about 1 to 2 weeks, allowing the culture to slowly transform both ingredients into something entirely new. Think of June tea as a beehive and a tea garden quietly working together inside a single jar, proving that nature sometimes creates its most remarkable partnerships through patience. Next, we'll discover a sparkling drink that looks surprisingly familiar to modern soda, yet has been nurturing beneficial microbes long before soft drinks ever existed. 6. Water Kefir, the crystal culture drink. It sparkles like soda, catches the light like sparkling water, and carries a gentle sweetness that feels instantly familiar. But beneath those tiny bubbles is a centuries-old fermentation tradition that quietly accomplishes something modern soft drinks never set out to do: feed life, instead of simply satisfying a craving. Water kefir is a naturally fermented drink made from water, sugar, and translucent kefir grains, living clusters of beneficial bacteria and yeasts that resemble tiny crystals. As they ferment, they transform the sweetened water into a lightly fizzy beverage with subtle fruit-like notes, far removed from the heavy sweetness of commercial sodas. Its earliest roots are often linked to Mexico, where naturally occurring Tibicos grains were carefully preserved and shared among families. These living cultures were valued not because they were rare, but because they could be reused again and again, creating an endless supply of fermented refreshment from just a few simple ingredients. Their survival depended on care, patience, and the understanding that a healthy culture was something worth passing on. During fermentation, the microorganisms consume much of the sugar, producing organic acids, carbon dioxide, and a diverse community of beneficial microbes. Research into fermented foods suggests these living cultures may contribute to microbial diversity in the gut, while scientists continue exploring how fermented beverages fit into overall digestive health. Today, many sparkling drinks rely on refined sugars, artificial flavors, and preservatives to create excitement. Water kefir achieves its gentle fizz through fermentation itself, a process powered entirely by living cultures rather than industrial carbonation. Traditionally, water kefir is prepared by fermenting sugar water with kefir grains for 24 to 48 hours, with fresh fruit or citrus often added during a second fermentation to deepen the flavor naturally. Think of water kefir as a tiny crystal garden, where billions of invisible helpers quietly transform ordinary water into a living drink, one bubble at a time. Next, we'll discover how something as ordinary as yesterday's bread became one of Eastern Europe's most treasured fermented traditions, and why people once chose to drink it instead of throwing it away. 7. Bread Kvass, the forgotten bread revival. Imagine turning yesterday's stale loaf into tomorrow's most refreshing drink. To modern ears, that sounds almost impossible. Yet for centuries, families across Eastern Europe discovered that what looked like leftovers could become one of the most nourishing beverages on the table. Bread Kvass is a traditional fermented drink made from toasted rye bread, water, and a natural starter, often with a touch of honey, raisins, or herbs. Instead of wasting hardened bread, communities transformed it into a mildly tangy, lightly sparkling drink with a deep malty flavor, unlike anything found in modern supermarkets. Its roots stretch back more than 1,000 years across Russia, Ukraine, Belarus, and neighboring regions. Long before refrigeration, Kvass was part of everyday life. Farmers drank it during harvest, soldiers carried it on long campaigns, and families served it with meals because it was affordable, practical, and remarkably satisfying. In many villages, brewing Kvass became as routine as baking bread itself, ensuring that almost nothing from the harvest went to waste. Fermentation changes far more than the flavor. Beneficial microorganisms break down complex compounds in the rye while producing organic acids, subtle carbonation, and B vitamins naturally present in fermented grains. Researchers continue to study fermented grain foods for their potential role in supporting digestive health and increasing the availability of certain nutrients, although many traditional benefits remain rooted in generations of lived experience. Today, leftover bread is often discarded, while energy drinks promise quick stimulation from sugar and caffeine. Bread Kvass offers a completely different philosophy, transforming abundance, patience, and fermentation into lasting nourishment. Traditionally, toasted rye bread is soaked in water, lightly sweetened, inoculated with a starter, and fermented for 1 to 3 days until it develops its signature tang and gentle fizz. Think of bread Kvass as a second life for the harvest, a reminder that, in traditional food cultures, even yesterday's bread could become tomorrow's living nourishment. Next, we'll discover how one humble root vegetable was transformed into a striking crimson drink that generations believed could restore vitality from the inside out. 8. Beet Kvass, the ruby gut restorer. Its color is the first thing you'll notice. Deep crimson, almost jewel-like, Beet Kvass looks more like an ancient ceremonial drink than something made from an ordinary root vegetable. Yet, for generations, that striking color hinted that something extraordinary was happening, long before anyone understood the science behind it. Beet Kvass is a traditional fermented drink made by submerging raw beets in salted water and allowing naturally occurring microorganisms to slowly transform them over several days. The result is a tangy, earthy beverage with a vibrant ruby hue that stands apart from both beet juice and pickled vegetables. Its story reaches into the villages of Eastern Europe, where beet harvests were too valuable to waste. Families fermented them not only to preserve the crop through long winters, but also because the drink became closely associated with strength, nourishment, and recovery. It found its place on farmhouse tables, accompanied seasonal meals, and was handed down through generations as part of everyday food culture rather than occasional medicine. As fermentation unfolds, beneficial bacteria multiply, while naturally occurring sugars are partially consumed, creating organic acids that give beet Kvass its distinctive sourness. At the same time, fermentation may increase the availability of certain plant compounds found in beets. Modern research continues to investigate fermented vegetables, dietary nitrates, and betalain pigments for their roles in digestive health, circulation, and the gut microbiome, though many traditional uses extend beyond what science has fully confirmed. Today, brightly colored drinks often owe their appearance to artificial dyes and added sugars. Beet Kvass achieves its remarkable color entirely from nature, while fermentation quietly reshapes the drink from the inside out. Traditionally, Chunks of fresh beet are placed in a jar with water and salt, then left to ferment for 3 to 5 days until the liquid develops its rich color and pleasantly tangy flavor. Think of beet kvass as a living ruby, patiently polished by time, beneficial microbes, and one of the Earth's most vibrant vegetables, into a drink that continues to captivate both tradition and modern curiosity. Next, we'll uncover a thick, forgotten grain drink that once fueled workers, travelers, and entire civilizations, yet today, almost no one outside its homeland has ever heard its name. 9. Boza, the forgotten grain guardian. At first glance, Boza hardly resembles the fermented drinks you've seen so far. It's thick instead of light, creamy instead of fizzy, and nourishing enough that, for centuries, many people considered it almost a meal in itself. That unusual texture is precisely why this ancient drink has refused to disappear. Boza is a traditional fermented beverage made by cooking grains such as millet, wheat, or corn, before allowing them to ferment gently with naturally occurring lactic acid bacteria and yeasts. The result is a rich, slightly tangy drink with a velvety consistency that is unlike soda, juice, or even yogurt-based beverages. Its history stretches across the Ottoman Empire and the Balkans, where it became a familiar sight in busy marketplaces during the colder months. Street vendors carried steaming containers through city streets, while laborers, merchants, and travelers relied on Boza for sustained nourishment during long days of physical work. It endured because it combined preservation, energy, and comfort in one remarkably simple recipe. Fermentation gradually transforms the cooked grains, producing beneficial microorganisms, organic acids, and subtle changes that may improve the availability of certain nutrients while softening the grain's natural compounds. Researchers continue to explore how fermented grain foods contribute to gut microbial diversity and digestive function, though many traditional beliefs surrounding Boza remain part of its rich cultural heritage rather than established clinical evidence. Today, quick energy often comes from highly processed snacks and sugary drinks that provide a brief burst before fading. Boza reflects an older philosophy: slow nourishment created through grains, fermentation, and patience. Traditionally, grains are cooked until soft, blended into a smooth mixture, lightly sweetened, and fermented for 1 to 3 days before being served cool, often with a sprinkle of cinnamon. Think of Boza as a harvest transformed into a cup, a reminder that, long before energy bars and protein shakes, entire civilizations found lasting nourishment through the quiet work of fermentation. Next, we arrive at a drink many researchers regard as one of nature's richest sources of living cultures, a fermented tradition whose remarkable microbial diversity continues to fascinate scientists today. 10. Milk kefir, the king of living cultures. What if one of the most diverse communities of living organisms you could consume wasn't found in an expensive supplement, but in a fermented drink that mountain families have been making for centuries? Milk kefir has earned a reputation that few fermented foods can match, and its greatest strength lies in something you can't even see. Milk kefir is a fermented dairy drink created by adding kefir grains, a remarkable living culture of bacteria and yeasts, to fresh milk. As the grains work, they transform the milk into a smooth, tangy beverage containing a remarkably diverse microbial community, making it distinctly different from ordinary yogurt or cultured milk. Its story begins in the Caucasus Mountains, where families treasured kefir grains so highly that they were passed down through generations, like family heirlooms. Rather than purchasing a new starter each time, households carefully nurtured the same living grains year after year, believing they were one of the family's most valuable possessions. Their survival depended not on wealth, but on faithfully keeping the culture alive. During fermentation, beneficial microorganisms consume much of the milk's lactose while producing organic acids, enzymes, and a complex network of living cultures. Modern research has identified dozens of microbial species in traditional kefir, and studies continue to investigate how this exceptional diversity may support gut microbial balance, digestive function, and immune health. Scientists are particularly interested in kefir because it offers far greater microbial diversity than many other fermented dairy products. Today, countless probiotic products promise billions of bacteria from a handful of isolated strains. Traditional milk kefir delivers something different, a naturally balanced ecosystem that has evolved through centuries of fermentation rather than laboratory formulation. Traditionally, kefir grains are added to fresh milk and left to ferment at room temperature for about 24 hours before being strained and reused to begin the next batch, creating a cycle that can continue indefinitely. Think of milk kefir as a thriving microscopic village in a glass, where countless living cultures work together in quiet harmony, just as they have for generations. Next, we'll discover a brilliantly colored fermented drink whose vivid appearance is only the beginning of a story, shaped by ancient harvests, seasonal traditions, and one surprisingly powerful seed. 11. Kanji, the crimson digestive elixir. Its brilliant crimson color almost looks too vivid to be natural. Yet for generations across northern India, that deep ruby hue became the unmistakable sign that fermentation had worked its quiet transformation. Long before laboratories measured antioxidants or studied the microbiome, families knew that when kanji reached this color, it was ready. Kanji is a traditional fermented drink made from black carrots, or, in some regions, red carrots or beets, combined with water, mustard seeds, and salt. Left to ferment under the warmth of the sun, it develops a pleasantly sour taste, an earthy aroma, and a striking magenta color that immediately sets it apart from ordinary vegetable juices. Its roots run deep into the spring festivals of northern India, particularly in Punjab and Rajasthan, where families prepared kanji as winter gave way to warmer days. After months of preserved foods, the arrival of fresh root vegetables marked a seasonal transition, and kanji became a cherished tradition that celebrated both the harvest and the renewal of the table. It endured because it united preservation, flavor, and seasonal wisdom in a single jar. As fermentation progresses, naturally occurring lactic acid bacteria multiply while gently transforming the vegetable sugars. The process creates organic acids and may improve the availability of certain beneficial plant compounds. Researchers continue to investigate how fermented vegetables, colorful plant pigments, and mustard seed compounds may contribute to digestive health, microbial diversity, and overall wellness, although many traditional uses remain part of cultural practice rather than definitive clinical evidence. Today, brightly colored drinks are often created with artificial flavors and dyes. Kanji earns its remarkable appearance through nothing more than vegetables, spices, sunlight, and thyme. Traditionally, chopped black carrots, mustard seeds, salt, and water are placed in a glass jar and left to ferment in the sun for 3 to 5 days, with the mixture stirred daily until its signature tang develops. Think of kanji as sunlight captured in a crimson jar, a living reminder that nature's most vibrant colors often signal stories that are still unfolding. Next, we'll discover an unusual fermented drink made not from vegetables or dairy, but from sprouted grains, where new life begins before fermentation even starts. 12. Rejuvelac, the sprouted gut reviver. Most fermented drinks begin with fruit, milk, or tea. Rejuvelac begins with something far more unexpected, a seed waking up. Before fermentation even starts, the grain first comes alive through sprouting, setting in motion a transformation that has fascinated natural food enthusiasts for decades. Rejuvelac is a fermented beverage made by soaking and sprouting whole grains such as wheat, rye, quinoa, or barley, then fermenting the sprouts in fresh water for 1 to 2 days. The result is a lightly cloudy, lemony drink with a clean, refreshing tang that bears little resemblance to the grain it came from. Although sprouted grain fermentations have existed in various traditional food cultures, Rejuvelac became widely known in the 20th century through the natural foods movement, where it was embraced as a simple way to combine sprouting and fermentation into one living beverage. Its lasting appeal comes from its remarkable simplicity, requiring little more than grain, water, time, and patience to produce batch after batch. The transformation begins during sprouting, when dormant seeds activate enzymes that prepare new life to emerge. Fermentation follows, allowing beneficial microorganisms to flourish while producing organic acids and altering the grain's nutritional profile. Researchers continue investigating how sprouting and fermentation together may improve the availability of certain nutrients and support digestive health, though much of Rejuvelac's reputation is still based on traditional practice and emerging science rather than large clinical trials. Today, many wellness drinks rely on long ingredient lists and bold marketing claims. Rejuvelac offers the opposite, a living beverage built from one of humanity's oldest foods through 2 natural biological processes. Traditionally, whole grains are soaked overnight, sprouted for 2 to 3 days, then covered with fresh water and fermented for 24 to 48 hours before the liquid is strained and enjoyed. Think of Rejuvelac as the moment a seed awakens, capturing the quiet energy of new life before it ever breaks through the soil. Next, we'll meet a fiery fermented drink whose warming spice has comforted unsettled stomachs across continents for centuries, and whose traditional preparation is far different from the sweet sodas bearing its name today. 13. Fermented ginger beer, the ancient bloat breaker. The drink we call ginger beer today often has surprisingly little in common with the original. Before factories turned it into a sugary soft drink, it was a living fermentation, brewed slowly, bubbling naturally, and treasured wherever people sought comfort after a heavy meal or a long journey. Traditional fermented ginger beer begins with a ginger bug, a lively starter culture created from fresh ginger, water, and sugar. As wild yeasts and beneficial bacteria multiply, they become the foundation for a naturally sparkling drink, infused with ginger's unmistakable warmth. Unlike commercial ginger sodas, the traditional version is alive with fermentation, rather than simply flavored to imitate it. Its story stretches back to 18th century Britain, before spreading throughout the Caribbean, Australia, and North America, where home brewers adapted the recipe using local ingredients. Families continued making it because it was inexpensive, refreshing, and closely associated with settling the stomach and preserving ginger's bold flavor long after harvest. Fermentation reshapes both the drink and the ginger itself. The living culture consumes much of the sugar while producing natural carbonation, organic acids, and beneficial microorganisms. At the same time, ginger contributes bioactive compounds such as gingerols and shogolols, which researchers continue to study for their roles in digestive comfort and nausea. Modern science suggests fermentation may also influence the availability of some of these compounds, although research is still evolving. Today, many ginger-flavored soft drinks contain little real ginger and no living cultures. Traditional fermented ginger beer reminds us that true refreshment once came from fermentation rather than carbonation alone. Traditionally, a ginger bug is cultivated over several days before being added to sweetened ginger tea, which then ferments for another 2 to 5 days until naturally sparkling. Think of fermented ginger beer as a living flame in a bottle, its gentle bubbles carrying centuries of craftsmanship and one of nature's most celebrated roots into every sip. Next, we'll travel to the tropical landscapes of Central America, where people discovered that the part of the pineapple most often thrown away could become one of the world's most remarkable fermented drinks. 14. Tepache, the golden fermentation miracle. The sweetest part of a pineapple isn't always the fruit itself. For generations, the greatest treasure was hidden in the part most people throw away. Long before food waste became a modern concern, traditional communities had already discovered that pineapple rinds could be transformed into a vibrant fermented drink with remarkable character. Tepache is a lightly fermented beverage traditionally made from pineapple peels and cores, water, and unrefined cane sugar, often infused with warming spices such as cinnamon and cloves. Within just a few days, the naturally occurring yeasts on the fruit awaken, creating a golden, gently effervescent drink that's both refreshing and surprisingly complex. Its origins reach back to the indigenous cultures of Mexico, where fermentation was an everyday skill used to preserve harvests and draw out new flavors from familiar ingredients. Over time, Tepache became a beloved household drink and a fixture of local markets, proving that even the humblest parts of the harvest deserved a second life. Its survival wasn't just about avoiding waste. It reflected a tradition of transforming abundance into nourishment. As fermentation progresses, naturally occurring microorganisms consume part of the fruit's sugars while producing organic acids and gentle carbonation. Pineapple also contains bromelain, an enzyme that researchers continue to investigate for its role in protein digestion and digestive comfort. Although fermentation changes the drink's composition, scientists are still exploring how these living cultures and naturally occurring compounds may work together within the gut. Today, many fruit drinks rely on concentrates, artificial flavorings, and added sugars to imitate freshness. Tepache achieves its vibrant taste through little more than fruit, fermentation, and patience. Traditionally, pineapple rinds, water, piloncillo or brown sugar, cinnamon, and cloves are left to ferment for 2 to 4 days before the drink is strained and served chilled. Think of Tepache as the harvest's hidden encore, a reminder that sometimes the most extraordinary nourishment begins with the part everyone else overlooks. Next, we'll meet the hardworking tonic that kept generations of farmers refreshed through long summer days, blending vinegar, ginger, and tradition into one remarkably enduring drink. 15. Switchel, the farmer's digestive tonic. Long before brightly colored sports drinks promised hydration in a bottle, exhausted farmers had already perfected their own refreshing tonic. It wasn't created in a laboratory or designed by marketers. It was mixed in kitchens, carried into fields, and trusted through generations of hard physical work. Switchel is a traditional drink made by combining raw apple cider vinegar, fresh ginger, water, and a natural sweetener such as honey or molasses. Unlike fermented beverages that develop their living cultures in the jar, Switchel traditionally begins with already fermented vinegar, bringing together several time-honored ingredients in one remarkably simple tonic. The result is a bright, tangy drink with a warming spice that feels both invigorating and deeply refreshing. Its story is closely tied to colonial America and the Caribbean, where farmers drank Switchel during long days in the fields. Before commercial electrolyte drinks existed, this homemade mixture became a trusted companion during harvest seasons, valued for its refreshing taste and practical simplicity. It endured because every ingredient was familiar, affordable, and easy to keep on hand. Although Switchel itself is not fermented after mixing, its key ingredient, raw apple cider vinegar, owes its character to fermentation. During that process, beneficial bacteria convert apple sugars into acetic acid, while forming the living culture often called the mother. Researchers continue to investigate vinegar's role in supporting healthy blood sugar responses after meals, while ginger remains one of the most widely studied traditional herbs for digestive comfort. Today, many hydration drinks depend on refined sugars, artificial colors, and synthetic flavorings. Switchel offers a different philosophy, combining naturally fermented ingredients with whole food traditions that have stood the test of time. Traditionally, Switchel is prepared by stirring raw apple cider vinegar with water, grated ginger, and honey or molasses, then allowing the flavors to mingle before serving it chilled over ice. Think of Switchel as the quiet strength of a long summer harvest captured in a glass, a simple blend where fermentation, tradition, and honest ingredients work together in perfect balance. And finally, we arrive at perhaps the most familiar bottle on this list, yet one whose greatest secret is hidden in the cloudy strands that many people have been taught to avoid. 16. Raw apple cider vinegar, with the mother, the living gut catalyst. At the bottom of millions of bottles floats something many people mistake for a flaw. They shake it away, filter it out, or buy a perfectly clear version instead. Yet those cloudy strands tell the real story of why traditional apple cider vinegar has remained a household staple for thousands of years. Raw apple cider vinegar with the mother begins as fresh apple juice. Through two natural stages of fermentation, yeasts first transform the fruit's sugars into alcohol, and beneficial bacteria then convert that alcohol into acetic acid. The result is a tangy, amber-colored vinegar containing the mother, a living network of beneficial bacteria, enzymes, and cellulose that distinguishes it from highly processed, filtered varieties. Its story stretches back to the ancient world, where vinegar was valued by civilizations from Egypt and Greece to Rome as both a food preservative and a practical kitchen staple. Rather than being reserved for special occasions, it became part of everyday life because apples were abundant, fermentation was understood, and each batch could be made using simple methods passed through generations. Fermentation doesn't simply create acidity, it builds an entire living ecosystem. Modern research suggests vinegar may help support healthy post-meal blood sugar responses and digestive function in some individuals, while scientists continue investigating how traditionally fermented vinegars interact with the gut microbiome. Much of the interest centers on the unfiltered living form rather than heavily refined versions. Today, many people choose crystal-clear vinegar because it looks cleaner. Traditional wisdom suggests the opposite may hold the greater story. The living mother that naturally forms during fermentation is precisely what sets raw vinegar apart. Traditionally, crushed apples are allowed to ferment naturally over several weeks before the vinegar matures with the mother intact. It's commonly diluted in water or incorporated into dressings and marinades rather than consumed straight. Think of raw apple cider vinegar as the final chapter in fermentation's story, a living bridge between orchard and table, where time, microbes, and nature quietly work together to transform something ordinary into something enduring. And with that, our journey comes full circle. 16 living traditions from different corners of the world, each revealing the same timeless lesson. When people learn to work with fermentation instead of against it, they discovered that caring for the gut often began not in a pharmacy, but in the everyday foods and drinks they faithfully prepared at home. We've explored 16 fermented drinks from cultures separated by continents, yet united by one timeless understanding. A healthy gut begins with living foods. Long before science revealed the gut microbiome, a vast community of trillions of microorganisms that supports digestion, immunity, and overall well-being, our ancestors were naturally nourishing it through fermentation. Today, many processed drinks are designed for sweetness, convenience, and long shelf life, but they offer little to support this delicate internal ecosystem. In contrast, these traditional fermented drinks have been carefully prepared for generations, allowing beneficial microbes to flourish naturally. Modern research is now helping explain why these ancient practices endured. Healthy gut restoration isn't about finding a miracle product. It's about consistently feeding the microbiome with living, nutrient-rich foods. Sometimes the greatest breakthroughs aren't new discoveries. They're ancient traditions waiting to restore what modern living has slowly taken away. So here's your Rooted Heritage Challenge. For the next 14 days, don't try to make all 16 drinks. Choose just one that genuinely interested you. Learn how it's traditionally prepared. Make it part of your routine, and simply pay attention. Notice how replacing just one processed drink with one living, traditionally fermented drink changes the rhythm of your day. Lasting habits aren't built through perfection, they're built through consistency. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Which fermented drink surprised you the most, and which one will you try first? Share it in the comments below. I read them all, and your experience might encourage someone else to begin their own journey. If you enjoyed this documentary, please give it a like and share it with someone who's passionate about natural living and forgotten food traditions. And if you haven't joined Rooted Heritage, subscribe and turn on the notification bell. Every week we uncover another piece of the practical wisdom our ancestors left behind, where history, scripture, and modern research meet to help us better understand the remarkable foods that have quietly sustained generations. Until next time, stay rooted.